Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Suter.
Listen to this song for a second. All right, let's pull up the slides there. So that song, the walk-up song there, that was all generated in AI. On suno.com, we'll get to that in a little bit, but actually I learned from that from a student of mine, Alex, who's actually over there. Hey, Alex. So I learned a lot from my students, and that was something really cool that you can actually use commercially for content. So I burned firewood, and I was out in the woods by myself, cutting wood, and I was cutting a tree down, and it was kind of tangled up with another tree. It started to fall. I heard a crack. I looked up, and that was the worst thing I could do. Whack, right in the forehead. I stumble down, fall down. I called Jess. I'm like, I'm fine. She's like, no, you're going to the hospital. Fine. So I went into the hospital, and I'm small talking with the nurse practitioner while she's stitching up my forehead. And I said, I teach computer tech at high school. And she said, I got a story I got to tell you. She says, last year I got a phone call from a guy. He said, your daughter was in a car accident with one of my guys, and she saw some things that she should not have. And we're not going to let her go until you send us some money. Daughter comes on the phone and says, Mom, I'm really scared. Do whatever they tell you to do. I think they're going to kill me. And guy comes back on. The nurse practitioner that was treating me paid the man. I don't know how. And then call ends. She calls her daughter. Daughter says, what are you talking about? I'm fine. As you probably have guessed by now, that was all AI generated daughter's voice. And that was the moment that I realized, yeah, you hear about these things like, oh, that happens somewhere else. That's in New York. That's in Chicago. No, this happened in Lima. It's here. It's already dangerous. It's exciting, but it's dangerous. So that's when I realized we're in the future. And so I have this, I'll spare you the gory injury photos, but this is me. Some students thought it was funny to cover up my face because my forehead was grotesque. And so I got tired of answering questions, so I put up this. And my fiance thought it would be funny to give me a mink recovery cake. And so this is the environment of my classroom, okay? So AI, Eli 5 style, which is Chad alluded to. Eli 5, what the heck is that? Eli 5 is explain like I'm 5. It's a technique, it's not an insult to anybody's intelligence, it's a technique to explain something, boil it down, distill it to its most basic components without all the fluff and industry lingo. It's actually kind of hard to do. It actually tells you somebody's really an expert if they can boil it down in Eli 5 it. So when you're listening to other speakers the rest of the time, or you're talking in conversations and somebody's using lingo, you can say, whoa, can you Eli 5 that for me? Like this is now a part of my own like conversation is I tell people to Eli 5 stuff a lot. So basically, what's AI? It's a computer you give directions to, and then it creates stuff, and it tries to act human. That's my Eli 5 version of AI. Now, there is a much more technical definition. OECD, which is 38 countries around the world, that this organization helps them coordinate their policies. Okay, and you can read that, but the only part I want to point out here is that the directions can be explicit, you tell it exactly what you want, or implicit. That's the impressive part. That means it can imply things. It'll take meaning from the words you typed and realize, actually, I think they meant this. And it's really impressive. So there's the actual technical definition. I love explaining this because the Dunning-Kruger effect, this is not necessarily AI related, this applies to a lot of things. How many of you have heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? Okay, a handful. So in the beginning, when you learn about something, AI, how to change your oil, whatever it is, you are low confidence, low knowledge. And then as soon as you start to learn stuff, you think, man, I I know a lot about this, right? Somebody dabbling with ChatGPT or AI music, they're like, yeah, I got this. I know a lot. And then the more you learn about something, the more you realize there is that you don't know, right? Oh man, there's a lot more to this. I don't think I'm going to get this, which is called the valley of despair, by the way. And a lot of people get stuck there and they don't leave there. That's the problem. They'll get to that valley and be like, this is overwhelming. And AI can be very overwhelming. It's a lot. Because every time you think you know something, it changes 3 days later. Or something else new comes out. And it's like a full-time job to try to keep up with it. But you keep playing with it. I'm going to come back to this theme of play. And it starts to make sense. And then eventually you're like, yeah, I know quite a bit, but it is pretty complicated, right? But if we zoom out, there's a lot of room to the right for knowledge. We really don't know how much we don't know about AI, which is why so many experts are conflicting on their predictions of AI, because we don't know. So we zoom out even further, and there's even more knowledge yet to come, and more, and holy cow, we are a speck in the bottom corner, and there's this universe of knowledge of AI that we don't even know. AI was coined in '56, Dartmouth. I love this guy in the front row, middle, Peter Milner. Not a computer guy, neuropsychologist, nuclear reactor designer, pretty smart dude. He was invited and he says, most of the time I had no idea what they were talking about, which I think places him neatly on the Dunning-Kruger chart. But he's a neuropsychologist. You may have heard of these neural networks. I'll talk about this in a little bit. But it's trying to make the computer make connections like the brain does. It's not linear, it's a matrix of connections. Now, what most people think of AI, they think of November of '22 when ChatGPT came out. It was released to the public. AI's been around for, well, since 1956. So why this? Well, this is when the first generative AI was pushed out to the public and said, here, try it. And people started saying, write me a poem about blank. Or all these creative prompts they started giving it. So I'm at Thanksgiving sharing it with my family, saying, give me 2 random objects like sweet corn and cats, and write a poem about it. And it somehow weaves it together. A beautiful thing. And then it was followed by, whoa, what happened there? Google's Gemini, Perplexity, Snapchat, Copilot, and a whole bunch of others. And then by the way, how come these were able to come out so fast, right after the ChatGPT came out? They were already there. They've been working on it for years. They didn't release it because they felt it wasn't ready, right? You don't want to release a product that's 85% done and people try it and they're like, this sucks. Like, it doesn't work right. And then people are turned off. They're like, nope, once you get that bad taste in your mouth, you don't really want to go back. But this pushed everybody to release the generative AIs, generative meaning it actually generates new content. And then, of course, there's these companies, which have been working on these things for 10, 15, 20 years in all these different sectors. Just most people didn't know about it. Now it's a household kitchen table term. Before the ChatGPT, people didn't realize how much AI was being used, even in like your Netflix feed. We think you'll like this. It's a combination of algorithms and AI, but. So how does AI work? LLMs, you'll hear that term thrown around. Think of it this way. You have millions of books in the largest library you've ever seen, and there's thousands of these aisles of books. And you tell the machine, go read every single one of those. Look how the sentences are formed with punctuation and grammar and tone even, like a snide mean tone or a happy tone. And then the computer learns all those things and gets better as it learns, and this is training the AI model. The more data you can feed it, the better it's going to be in different situations. So essentially, an LLM is just the computer's read a whole bunch of websites, books, everything it can get its hands on. Okay. By the way, a lot of that, there's some lawsuits coming down the pipe of Your personal data is being used to train these AIs. And there are laws coming that are going to say, no, they have to ask you if they can use your data to train their AI. But as of right now, it's kind of a Wild West. Exciting, right? Thanks. AI music. This is what you heard when I walked up here, suno.com. The prompt I gave it is actually a rap song. I did a country one too, but and I phonetically spelled Suter. It's actually S-U-T-E-R. But anyways, it's free. Took me about 15 seconds, and it generated the lyrics, the music, everything. I made a rap song, a country song, and if I have time, I'll actually play one I made for Social Media Week Lima. That's a pop song, kind of sounds like Taylor Swift. But AI music is really fun. The free you can just play around with. If you want to use it commercially, it's still very reasonable, right? I am not a rep for them, but for what it does is really impressive for the price. So AI, how's it going to be diffused into society? Something like this. Right now we're in that early 10 to 15%, right? The innovators are already like, yeah, let's do this. Let's implement it in our business. And then there's that 15% where I think that we're at right now. We're starting to get into that early majority, that big chunk of 50%, and that's when it's going to really explode. Right now, it feels like the fuse is lit, okay? And then, of course, you have the people that are late, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's all perceived risk versus perceived value, right? You don't want to implement AI into production when it's a loose cannon, and you're like, well, I hope this works. We're going to fire this percent of our workforce and use AI, right? So, not a good idea. So how do you phase that in? A buddy of mine works for Nationwide Insurance in Columbus at the headquarters, and I asked him about computer programming. How are you guys going to integrate AI? He said it's 3 phases. First is experimental. You write the code, you let AI write code, and you compare them side by side. Line by line, side by side, right? You're not actually using it in production. It's just like, let's pretend we use it in production. And then phase 2, it's actually being used in production, but all the code the AI writes is still human checked, which means you need less manpower because you can read and check the code a lot faster than you can have junior developers write it. And then phase 3 is full production mode. AI code is writing a lot of stuff, and it is spot checked. So it's not even being checked anymore. Now, there's no timeline on these. It's as long as it takes to make it accurate, right? Because with AI, you don't want to just trust what it spits out. You need to check the accuracy of that, especially in production. My son and I were at Sam's Club last week, and this little street sweeper thing was driving along with no driver. I thought that was interesting. And I looked closer, and here's an inventory scanner. And it's shining a light on the inventory and telling the employees what's out of stock, objects that have been stolen, that kind of thing. And if you look really close, it says Brain OS on it. So I was like, what is that? So I geeked out on it a little bit. And here's what Brain OS is. It literally sends it to all the employees that they want to have it. Here's what's out of stock. Here's where you need to go to put stuff, etc. It even shows the little guy, Marvin, driving around, shows you where he's at, how far he has to go. I thought that was pretty sweet. I thought it was just a street sweeper. And actually it does both. I looked it up. It'll clean the floors as it's scanning the wall. I thought that was funny. And so education, how does this apply? It's going to be hyper-personalized, and I don't just mean in the classroom. I mean, how do we educate ourselves? You want to learn how to weld or change the oil or write better content. Hyper-personalized. As you have these conversations with AI, it's getting better and better, smarter and smarter. It's learning about you and your preferences, the type of tone that you prefer, the length that you prefer, all of those kinds of things. But I think it's important to note that we need to change what we're educating for, because if I as a teacher or you as a boss to your employees, you're training them to, if you're training them on things that AI already does really well, you're setting them up to lose to AI. or at least to lose to an employee that knows how to use AI. At that point, you're not just using AI, you're using IA, which is our intelligence augmented. In other words, using AI to add to, augment my own job, what I do, okay? Apple just announced things like this that's coming in the next iOS version for iPhone, iPad. Put in some numbers and variables and it gives you all the answers. It'll chart it, it'll do all kinds of things, which is pretty sweet. Conmigo, you guys know what Khan Academy is? Most people probably do. Conmigo was a paid subscription for teachers that uses AI to help them do their job a lot faster. And now it's free, thanks to, I think, Microsoft. What I love about this is it helps kids without giving them the answers. That's, I think, is the biggest sell to me, is I don't want them to be able to just get the answer. I want them to know how to get to the answer, the process. And these are a few of the things it can do, and I know it's hard to read, but at the very bottom middle it says leveler. I just want to point that one out because imagine you have a student that really struggles to read. Maybe they're not a native English speaker. You can say, okay, take this chunk of text and boil it down to this level. It's a built-in Eli 5, okay, which is awesome. ChatGPT 4.0, how many have seen this? Some. If you have not, let's just see.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Rocky. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm awesome. Listen, I got some huge news.
Oh, do tell. I'm all ears.
Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to be interviewing at OpenAI. Have you heard of them?
OpenAI? Huh? Sounds vaguely familiar. Kidding, of course. That's incredible, Rocky. What kind of interview?
Well, it's for a software engineering role, but I just need to know, do I look presentable, professional?
Well, Rocky, you definitely have the I've been coding all night look down, which could actually work in your favor. Maybe just run a hand through your hair or lean into the mad genius vibe. Your enthusiasm is what's really going to shine through.
I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to throw this on. What do you think?
Oh, Rocky, that's quite a statement piece. I mean, you'll definitely stand out. Though maybe not in the way you're hoping for an interview.
Okay, I got it.
That scares me. Here's why. The conversational tone. This is being released soon, that's kind of vague, but the ability to have that kind of conversation. What bothers me is that she kind of stutters. She'll do that, you know, how we talk sometimes, we have a little stutter. She laughs. She got the irony of him putting on a ridiculous hat for a job interview. And to me, the tone I got was that she was flirting with him. I don't know if you got that vibe or not, but it was awkward. And it's even weird because I just referred to it as a she. It. I don't look at my Dell computer and be like, yeah, he's pretty cool. It's not a person. But our brains can't tell the difference. People are developing emotional connections to machines. Let that sink in for a second. Yeah. Imagine all the conversations besides job interviews that you could have. Let me tell you about my day. Oof. By the way, I've already talked to Jess and some other people about this. If you have a connection with, I don't know what he calls her, if you have that connection with them, in my opinion, I think that's an emotional cheating. Even though it's a machine. If your brain has an emotional connection to it, that is my opinion. You might think differently. It's just a computer. But what if I'm getting attention from it and I feel more comfortable that way and she compliments me and she listens about my day without judging me? I think it's cheating. GPT, what the heck is that? People talk about it all the time, but we don't know what it means. And I know I probably have to speed up, right, George? You're good? I'm good. Okay. So generative, it creates new stuff, right? It generates. Pre-trained, that's where we talked about the LLM, large language model. It's been pre-trained on all the websites and books it can find. And transformer, that's what allows it to understand what it's looking at in a human-like way, right? The relationship between words, which is really impressive. Neural networks, what are neural networks? So imagine you have this room full of cars and tracks. In it, each one has a little car. Each car has a tiny little driver, and that driver gets to decide left, right, left, right. And I want to tell the car to go from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And at first, it's going to bump into things a bunch of times. But each time it makes a mistake, it learns a little bit from it. And then it gets a little better and a little smarter and a little smarter. And before you know it, it's zooming all over the place. Cars are going every which way and none of them are colliding. That's what our neural network is. It is establishing new connections and learning from mistakes, right? It's how our own brain works, right? It's how you build those connections in your brain. So now computers have neural networks. Remember Peter Milner from the 1956 photo? Neuropsychologist. Not a coincidence. Neural networks. They wanted, from the beginning in the 50s, they wanted to connect computers' way of thinking with humans' way of thinking. Prompt engineering. This is essentially, how do you ask the AI good questions? Which is a skill. And I think that should be a skill that you actually start putting on resumes and looking for. Well, how are you at prompt engineering? It's not mechanical engineering, but it's just asking it good questions. And prompt chaining is you give it a prompt, it gives you an answer or image. And then I say, let's refine this or change this, right? It's just, a prompt chain is literally the back and forth conversation that you have with the AI to get to what you want. So for example, when I was trying to make that neural network image, which by the way, almost all the images in this presentation are all generated by AI. So I said, yeah, create an image of these toy cars on a track in a matrix, and it gave me 4 options. I said, make the road smaller for more connected tracks, and it gave me 4 more, and I picked one of those and went with it. Took me about a minute to get that beautiful neural networks image. This one scares me. Actually, it makes me sad. Nomi.ai, and there's a bunch like this. I heard about this from the Rich on Tech podcast, which is a great nerdy podcast. But their slogan, AI companion with a memory and a soul. Wait, you're telling me your selling point is trying to tell me that this thing I'm connecting with also has a soul like me? If I buy into that, I've already stepped away from a lot of my human relationships. Of course, this one's going to be nice and accepting and complimentary, et cetera, et cetera. I actually kind of despise this service because AI is great. It's going to do all these amazing things. Yeah, it is. But the human element is critically important. Anyways, don't use it. I haven't. I refuse to. Did you know Tribeca Film Festival has a category just for AI-generated videos this year? Short-form videos? Yeah. Pixar quality in some instances, pretty amazing. Quick example, ChatGPT. This is what a prompt looks like. Create a description for this event. And then it spits out copy that you could put on a poster, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you would obviously read it and check it. It gives you some bullet points, et cetera, right? How many of you have used ChatGPT? There's the 94% majority. So we're all familiar with that. That's good. How many of you have used Perplexity? We went from 90% to about 4%. Okay, so Perplexity would be a competitor to ChatGPT. Their own CEO says it's like Wikipedia and ChatGPT had a baby. What does that mean? It means the sources are cited. Like in Wikipedia, at the very bottom of the Wikipedia article, it says all the sources with links. Yeah, the other AIs don't do that. Also, this is amazing. This one has access to the open internet, whereas ChatGPT does not. It's pre-trained on models, but it might be 6 months old. When I write code, it might be giving me code that I know is 6 months old because the code has changed how they write the code. But including Reddit, Perplexity has access to all these things, which is amazing. Also free. So I thought, hey, let's do a side by side by side very quickly. 2 examples. One is summarizing a web page, and one is generating an image. So this is a Duke Law School article about should we disclose if a content or image is made with the help of AI. I was researching for this presentation, and I thought, why not just put that in there? Anyway, so Duke Law School article, that's how long the article is. Oof, it actually goes even longer. All right, ChatGPT, you're up. I said, summarize this, and I pasted in the link, enter. It gave me this. Oh, nice chunk, kind of a Cliff Notes version, or Spark Notes, I guess it is now. Copilot, very short, very succinct. And Perplexity, kind of similar to ChatGPT, right? So I think it's good for you to get a flavor of what these different things do and just open up 3 tabs or 5 tabs of different AIs and just paste the same prompt into them to see what they get and see what it does for you. Cool. All right, create an image of a golden retriever driving a race car. ChatGPT says, here you go. It looks like my dog Daisy driving a race car. Pretty good. Copilot. Wow, this is actually my favorite one. Copilot's my go-to for image generation. It's like photorealistic and amazing. I love it. Perplexity says no. It doesn't have that capability, which I didn't realize till I tried to tell it to create an image. Just no. Caveats. By the way, this image was generated, very near future, I think there's gonna be some pushback. Right now it's being advertised, hey, our product is AI integrated, clothing, not food, well, maybe it's a food, I don't know. Everything's AI integrated. I think very soon there's gonna be some pushback where people are gonna be like, you know what, I actually don't want it to have any AI in it. I want it to be an entirely human production or basic machines like assembly line machines. And people will start advertising that they are AI free. Think about you go to the grocery store and the meats might say they're biotics free or pesticide free, like that. You're gonna start seeing things that are AI free as a differentiator. This is our sales pitch. We didn't use AI. It was all humans. That's coming, I think. AI hallucinations. You'll hear this term, it means the AI spit out something that the machine's like, well, I think this is right. But a human looks at it and you're like, you are insane. To us, it looks like the thing hallucinated, right? But to the AI, by the way, if you blur your eyes and look at that image, it looks like a little boy. But if you look at it closer, it's a very swirly, creepy mess. Interesting, right? How we see it versus how the AI sees it. This was a big moment in my life. This was the very first time that I put in text to get a video. I said I want a boy playing with 1 foot tall T-Rexes, Tyrannosaurus Rexes. And this is what it gave me. The kid's kind of awkward. The T-Rexes look like clay salamanders. I don't know. So maybe it's a hallucination. I think it is. LumaLabs.ai has a lot of promise, but as of right now, in my experiments, it's got a long way to go. And at first I think, oh, a year from now. No, at the pace it goes, we're talking maybe a few months, right? It'll be there. Yeah, try it out sometime. It does take like anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours to generate on the free tier for these, whereas the other stuff is like less than 30 seconds, but the video ones are a lot longer. AI accuracy, you gotta check it, especially for important information, legal stuff. You gotta check it. You'll get yourself in trouble. By the way, did you know that a Sports Illustrated writer got fired for writing an article with AI, but he didn't tell anybody? I'll come back to that in a second. I was talking to George back there about coders. Will AI replace coders? Why is there a dishwasher? Think of it this way. I could wash all the dishes by hand, yeah. No problem. I know what I'm doing. But couldn't I just like set it up a little bit, let the machine do all the work, and then when it's done, check it? It's pretty much how a dishwasher works, right? So this is a great idea of like augmentation with AI, okay? So will it replace coders? It'll replace some junior developers, grunt work developers, but the people that have the critical thinking, that know how to ask the right questions, they're not gonna be replaced, at least not right now. But some takeaways: if AI can augment your job, it will. Can't leave your head in the sand. You need to just start playing with it. Look up popular AI tools for blank and just start clicking around, right? Because the people that are head in the sand, they are gonna get left behind. AI disclosure, I think this is gonna happen. So ESPN article, let's see, I read the article, and at the bottom, it says, this article was written by AI. So if I got to, how would you feel if you read an article and at the bottom it was like, oh, by the way, this wasn't written by staff, this was written by AI? I feel cheated. I don't know why, because they put in the prompt, et cetera, but they just copy and pasted it in. And I don't like that. It feels like they cheated. So I feel like at some point there will either be a law or there will be societal pressure to say, you really need to share how much of this image, art, text was AI written. Also, fun fact, you know what a Luddite is? It's a fun word. It's a person opposed to new technology, right? So the person that's like, no, I refuse to use the artificial's intelligences. Okay, but you might get left behind a little, right? And so how do you get over that anxiety about using AI? My advice is just start playing with it. Play with it, read about it, not even with things with work, okay? I wanna make this clear. In my opinion, and it's worked well teaching in schools and working with companies, has always been play just like with your kids and with your colleagues and be like, hey, let's try and make Luma Labs make a funny video about this. Or have Microsoft Copilot generate something, or like, let's test it. You know, really bizarre prompt. Just to play around with it and see what it can do. That's where you'll learn a lot, because you've given yourself permission to just screw up and make mistakes, and that's what play is about, right? Is enjoying the process, making mistakes, learning from it, without the pressure of, oh crap, we gotta write 100 social posts or this big long article, et cetera, but you may not know how to use the tool yet. So play with it. You might hear this term. Anybody hear the term PDOOM score? Oh, this is new. Okay. So if you're a nerd and somebody says, what's your PDOOM score? That is the probability of doom that AI will kill us all. This is an actual question circulating Silicon Valley. 20% chance. Not this year, but maybe by 2030. And finally, play and read. And I throw a dad joke in there. It's par for the course. And that's also AI generated. Thank you, Microsoft Copilot. But playing and reading, that's what I did for setting up for this entire presentation. It's what I do with my students. It is just, everything is based on The psychological safety that Jessica talked about is so important. Give yourself even that psychological safety by calling it play instead of, oh, I gotta research this, I gotta research this. Yeah, you can transition into that, but once you know how to use the tool because you've seen what it can do and what it actually can't do or doesn't do well. So anyways, I'm Mark Suter, and I am always a student, sometimes a teacher.